Investigation 9, representing and analyzing substances and the Limewater lab. So in this video, we'll take a look at the first two assignments we've done in Investigation 9. The first one being here to the right, the representing substances, is page 86. And what you did here, because we can't see atoms, we can represent them with stickers. So we had some stickers that I gave you, and in the first one it says carbon, and we know that the chemical formula for carbon is C. But what would an atom of carbon look like? So we used a sticker, and I'll just draw a red one. I believe in class it was orange, so you should have one orange. In this case it's red sticker. And then from the sticker we could look and say, okay, now what's the number of elements? The number of elements would be 1, because we just have one color sticker. The number of atoms in this case was just one sticker, so the number of atoms is 1. And then as we go down to the bottom of this worksheet, we have different substances. So H2O, so we could draw H2O as, let's say there's black sticker, and I know yours wasn't black. And we had two, let's say blues represent oxygen. So we would draw water, the substance water, as two different colors, but three atoms. And I taught you in class how to read a subscript. So the H2 means 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, and then this is our picture. And then from our picture you had to name the number of elements. Well, to name the number of elements you have to count the different colors. Well, we have blue and we have a black. So that's 2 different elements. And the number of atoms, you have to count each sticker. So we have 1, 2, 3 atoms. And this progresses down the page, and they get progressively larger. So these are substances, and the smallest substance, let's say if we had a glass of water and I pulled off one, I should say particle of water that's still water, that is still H2O, it would look like this. You'd have 3 atoms and 2 elements. So make sure you have this done down your paper. Now on the next sheet, I would say this sheet was a little more challenging. We gave you what the substance would look like with stickers, even though they're not colored. And then from those stickers, you had to determine the substance name, its formula, number of elements, and number of atoms. So the first one is CaCl2. CaCl2, and I had you turn back to your white substance sheet from Investigations 1 and 2 from chemical interactions. So all of these except for CO2, all of them are on your white substances sheet. So if we go through CaCl2, we would say the substance name is salt. Its chemical formula is CaCl. I'm sorry, it's hard to write on this. Cl2. Number of elements. So we have chlorine, 2 chlorines, and then we have a calcium. So the number of elements is 2 because those are represented by colors, as from the previous page, and the number of atoms is 3. 2 chlorines and a calcium, so 3. So as you do this one down the page, they get progressively harder, but go back to your white substances sheet from Investigations 1 and 2. Now, another thing I wanted to point out was atoms and compounds. Remember, roughly 90 elements represent the different atoms, and we did the periodic table. So we go from atoms combine to make new substances. one kind of atom equals an element. So we have 2 oxygen, 2 hydrogen. Those are elements. But when we have two or more kinds of atoms, we call those compounds, like CO2, carbon dioxide, NaCl, salt. Ooh, and I just see I made a mistake up here. This is calcium chloride, excuse me. So I'm going to pause this. So I'm changing this one. This was not NaCl, it's calcium chloride. See, it's calcium chloride. Sorry about that. I get so used to using salt, not until I saw it here did it remind me of this one up here. So it's calcium chloride. Anyway, when you have 2 kinds of atoms, it's called a compound. So carbon dioxide, sodium chloride, 2 different colors means a compound. Now, we haven't gone to the next level after naming a compound, but some compounds have strong bonds. We call those molecules. Some have weaker bonds between the atoms. We call those ionic compounds. Don't worry so much about that. The main thing I want you to know is from the 90 atoms that occur naturally on Earth, from the 90, you can either have just elements or the atoms bond to other atoms to make compounds. Okay, so then in class we did the lime water investigation, and the reason for doing this lab was to understand what a reaction is. So I'm going to walk you through. If I can get my thing set up here. I'm going to walk you through this lab. And what we have here is I've got some lime water. It's calcium hydroxide. I mixed a white powder with water, calcium hydroxide, and we're going to put some of it into a plastic container. Alright, that should be enough. And by reading your lab sheet, you were able to set up this contraption, and using this contraption we will be adding your breath, my breath in this case, to the water. So I've got a straw, and I would like to point out here, this is what we're doing right now. This is the calcium hydroxide right here in the bottle, and then we'll be adding your breath or my breath. So these are the atoms, and each of these, this is a compound because we have 2 or more atoms. This is a compound. Now we're going to add them together. These are called the reactants, and you wrote this down in class. And we're going to see what happens. So it only takes a minute for this reaction to occur. So you can notice already that we're getting a cloudiness to the water. And you would do that for several minutes. And then this is somebody's from the morning lab, and you can actually see the white. It looks like a white powder in the water. Okay, so what happened? Well, we mixed the calcium hydroxide with my breath. This arrow means yielding something new. So what's the new? It's the CaCO3, and that's calcium carbonate, and that's chalk. And it also yielded water, H2O, two H's and an oxygen. So the takeaway here, the thing I want you to remember is 8 atoms in, 8 atoms out. Calcium hydroxide, carbon dioxide in, calcium carbonate, which is chalk, and water out. No new atoms are formed. So in a reaction, something new is formed because the atoms rearrange to make new substances, but no new atoms are formed. They only rearrange. Now, also in this activity, I have calcium hydroxide in here, and I can pump in oxygen, so calcium hydroxide plus oxygen, and you can see that there's no cloudiness occurring in the water. And I can do this all day long, and we will not have a reaction. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. Okay, so make sure that you have these notes in your notebook and that you know what reactants are. And on this side I should write in, those are called products. So I should have written that on the board, products. So we have reactants and products. Calcium hydroxide and CO2 in, creating calcium carbonate and H2O. When I was showing you putting air, oxygen, into the calcium hydroxide with the pump, this was a representation of no reaction. We have calcium hydroxide in, so this was Ca, 2 oxygen, 2 hydrogens with this is O2, can't read it because there was a glare on the board, this is O2. And what we get out is exactly the same. This is still calcium hydroxide, and this was still our O2. So there's no reaction. Nothing new was formed. Nothing new was formed. The atoms did not rearrange. They would look exactly the same on both sides. I didn't have enough stickers. That's why I wrote it out by hand. So, the conclusion of this video, you should have checked to make sure your first two analyzing pages were done, and check to make sure that you really understand what we did in the lab today by showing a simple reaction when atoms rearrange to make a new substance. But don't mix that up with creating new matter in terms of creating new atoms. No new atoms were created. They just rearranged to make a new substance.